My name is Matthew Winchester. I am a student at UCF and I am a computer science major. My presentation is going to be about mobile security, how we need to protect our data on our mobile devices, as well as protect our rights. So the problem, as a survey on TechCrunch found in 2016, that as of November 2016, mobile devices have surpassed desktop devices on internet usage. This means that at any given moment these days, there are many more people using smartphones to access the internet, doing their banking, shopping, and general web browsing than there are people on desktop computers. So this means that there's a whole new realm of attack surfaces for cyber threats. There are many security methods that already exist, so we're going to take a look at those and talk about which are the most effective. And I also want to take a look at some of the legal issues around mobile phone security. What are the legalities as far as what law enforcement should be allowed to do, and what are some of the rights abuses that may have occurred already? And then we're going to talk about how we can find a balance. What do we need to do in order to come to a balance between privacy and security? So the mobile threat landscape is pretty diverse. The most obvious and simple being data loss. This just means that hackers want your information. So they get access to a phone and they want to look at what's on the phone. It could be financial records, credit card numbers, phone numbers. Data loss just means you lose your pictures. There are many things that are on your phone that you don't want other people to have that hackers are interested in having. The next step from that is surveillance, people having kind of a lasting presence on your phone, listening to what you're doing, looking at the messages you're sending, who you're talking to. All of that can be valuable information. Beyond that, you could have malicious code running on your phone, like spyware and adware, that's going to serve you relentless ads, kind of track what you're doing at a next level. And then finally, you could even lose a portion of your phone to a botnet. This is when malicious code is executing on your phone, and your phone becomes part of a network um, of an attack vector that could be attacking other phones. So a botnet is kind of a unique case for Android phones, but this is a big threat as well. So the solution to basically not losing access of your phone is mobile security. So back in the day when mobile smartphones first became really popular, the most common things were passcode locks. This started out with 4-digit pins, and something that was kind of unique to Android phones was a pattern lock where you draw sort of a unique path on the screen of your phone, and that serves as your password. These pins and pattern locks are kind of trivial to crack these days. Like a 4-digit number is super easy for computers to just brute force and guess. So the best way to go is probably still a strong password, meaning an alphanumeric string of characters that has different letters and numbers and symbols that is much longer and much harder to crack than just a 4-digit pin. These days, there are biometric security measures that have become super popular, and popular because they're secure and they're also very easy to use. So many phones have fingerprint scanners these days, as well as iris, retina scanners, and Apple's newest take on this is the Face ID system, which projects an array of dots all over your face, and then an infrared camera kind of looks at the contours of your face and decides whether or not you should be allowed into the phone. These are good, but they're not foolproof. All of these methods have been proven to be beaten. The S8 retina scan has been beaten, Face ID was beaten really quickly, Touch ID has been beaten. Despite this, it's better than nothing. Like Apple has said that Face ID is really secure. It's 1 in a million false positive rate, supposedly, whereas Touch ID was kind of 1 in 50,000. So these biometric methods are definitely getting better. As I said, Face ID was already beaten kind of hilariously just 2 days after the iPhone X came out. As this article on Engadget says, a man created a specially formed mask to defeat Face ID, and it worked. There's a really funny video of him just kind of pointing his phone at this weird looking mask of his face, and it opens the phone. So he was able to basically 3D print his face and then put on some pictures of his eyes and mouth and parts of his face, and this fooled Face ID. So while none of these methods are foolproof, it's definitely better than nothing, and it's important to have a layer of security on your phone, especially because chances are you're going to have your phone with you, and someone would have to steal your phone in order to hook it up to a computer or take the time to create some sort of mask. So it's in the general use, these biometric security measures are definitely good enough. Another thing that most people should have turned on already is encryption. iPhones by default are encrypted if you have a passcode on. Um, Android requires you to manually enable the encryption, but Android's encryption can kind of go even at a deeper level. You can encrypt the entire disk on the phone. Um, Apple also introduced something called the Secure Enclave, which is a dedicated processing portion of the hardware on the phone that stores Touch ID and Face ID data, just to kind of isolate it even more. This was hugely popular, works really well, and Android has something called the secure element that a lot of newer phones are implementing in hardware as well, to basically have a whole processor dedicated to the security and encryption of the device. So we're going to take a look now at the privacy and security issues that surround mobile phone usage. My favorite example of this is the Apple versus FBI fiasco that happened in 2016. As a result of the tragic San Bernardino terrorist attack, the FBI had an iPhone 5C that they wanted access to, and they were afraid that by entering the passcode over and over, that it was going to automatically delete itself, and they were going to lose this terrorist's data that they were trying to get access to. So they basically served Apple papers saying, you need to write some code to bypass these auto-delete and exponential backoff features, and Apple refused. Tim Cook made a really strongly worded open letter that he posted out on the internet citing that this would be a huge privacy violation, and historically opening this Pandora's box of security has never been good in the long run. And they even went so far as to talk about, the Constitution, that this was kind of like compelling speech out of Apple and that code could be protected under that. And the FBI kind of like, they backed off with that. And eventually they hired some white hat hackers, which were able to bypass this phone security. And this was kind of a scary thing. They wouldn't really admit who they hired. They had to be sued by the Associated Press in order to say how they got access to the device, and they still have not said who they hired to do this. And we've seen derivative works of what they did these days on something called a gray key, which is the device on the left that, basically it's a brute force box. You plug your iPhone into it, and within 20 minutes it will have given you access. It'll bypass the password on the iPhone. This is kind of concerning, like, is this something that should be protected by a warrant? Should the police be allowed to just hack into whatever iPhone they want if this is something that we consider private, something that we consider should be protected the same way your home or your automobile should be protected? So where's the balance? Because law enforcement, they need to be able to do their job. They need to be able to get in and stop the bad guys, but it should not come at the expense of our rights. I think it's kind of interesting that fingerprints can be compelled, but speech cannot. There have been court cases where the police have been told you cannot compel someone's passcode out of them to be able to get into their phone. So the fact that these devices exist is kind of concerning because it bypasses that layer of human security. And what happens if this technology falls into the wrong hands? So a classic example of this is just recently, ransomware attacks have occurred where methods that the NSA did not reveal they were using to hack into computers were leaked on the internet, and people made viruses out of them. People lost, thousands of dollars of Bitcoin. People had to pay these ransoms. Hospitals were shut down because their older computers were locked down by these ransomware attacks. So, it's probably not fair to say that's the NSA's fault, but it was certainly a derivative work of what the NSA had done that caused these viruses to be created. So the practical implications for this are huge. Everyone that has a smartphone needs to be aware of what's going on in the world. Everyone should use a passcode. They should turn on encryption to protect their data. You should have good security habits about what you're doing and when. And these right violations affect everyone. My question is, did the FBI outsource this work to a trustworthy source? It's kind of funny to think that if they weren't smart enough to hack into this iPhone by themselves, how are they smart enough to verify that the code that they have purchased is safe? What if the code that they're using is sending, has its own backdoor, and they've kind of opened a Pandora's box here. So it's up to us as citizens of this country and of the world to ask these questions, to set these limits on ourselves and on our own governments, how we're going to handle mobile security, because it really is a new thing that just hasn't been seen before. So in conclusion, we need to be aware of today's current trends. If you're going to buy an iPhone, if you're going to sink $1,000 into a new phone, you should know that that comes with a responsibility of how to use it correctly. You should buy phones from reputable companies. There are companies out there notorious for backdoors. Android Central had a funny article about how OnePlus and Huawei phones come like with 0-day vulnerabilities and backdoor access to your phone. So definitely buy from a reputable company. Biometric passcodes are probably safe. Touch ID is good. Face ID is better, but complex passwords are always going to be best. If you're working for a company that has sensitive data on your phone and you really just don't want anyone to get access to it, you should definitely use a complex password. In general, you should always turn on encryption. There's no reason not to. It doesn't slow down the phone. It just adds another layer of security. And we should stand up for our rights. As citizens of this country or wherever country you're from, you should voice your opinion about the policies that the government has regarding mobile phone security so that we can get the same sort of protection for these devices as other aspects of our lives and property are protected. So, in conclusion, we need to stand up, be aware, be smart, protect our data, and protect our privacy.